Okay then, this is Gutmanns Bars. This is the foot of your piece on Liverpool 9, Crystal Palace 0. And what we've wanted to do for the last 2 or 3 issues is find out Rob Gutmanns' favourite 3 bars in Liverpool. When I initially asked him this, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about his choices, and we're going to talk about Liverpool 9, Crystal Palace 0, as it's a bit of a recurring theme in this issue. You've got Liam's graphic, you've got Gareth's minute by minute, and now you've got me and Rob talking about that. But before we do that, we're going to find out what his 3 bars are, and you're going to see them one at a time, and we're also going to find out why he's picked each of them. And when I said to him, Rob, I need you to pick your favourite bars, he said, well, there's one clear number 1 that I want to do.
Pubs is the key word.
Pubs, sorry, pubs, not bars.
Bars are a whole different ballgame.
Sorry, pubs,
No,
not
that's
bars.
fine.
And your favourite pub is?
Peter Kavanagh's.
On Edgerton
Edgerton Street in Liverpool 8, on the fringe of the Georgian Quarter. Right,
Why is this your favourite?
It combines a lot of elements of what I want in a pub, I suppose. It does. It's got an historic feel. It feels like it's a living museum. I always like that in a pub. But it's run in a way that you think it's always been run this way. I think this dates back to 1840. We were told.
Yeah.
I could guess it. And you feel like sort of in a similar sort of way. It's probably not dissimilar in the mood of it in 1840 to where it is now. And it's just riddled with architectural artifact and stuff behind us.
It's gorgeous. I think
it smells right.
It's gorgeous. It's full of beautiful browns. That's the big thing I take from it. It's very much like it's a pub to come to. I like to come to it in daylight because you get the context between it, the way it is outside, and it's full of these beautiful browns and golden colours, and it just feels so cared for, and it also feels like it belongs. It does feel like it's being passed down through generations. This is the way in which it is. You know, you mentioned before these tables.
These like Art Nouveau classics, probably made in the 50s, but they're sort of really H.G. Wellsy, War of the Worlds, beautiful little artefacts which actually got a bit in the middle where you can flick your fag ash into if you're so inclined. And breaking the law.
I'm breaking the law.
And this day, but as you said, wood panelling always goes a long way in a pub because it creates that sort of natural warmth. I've been, my career involved in doing bars and pubs, that kind of thing, and you're always chasing atmosphere. You obsess about it and look at low-level lighting and this, that, and the other. But the Victorians, the ones who did it well, did it really, really well. This is an example of it because it's dark and it's a hidden dark opium den without the opium. Maybe they did actually have opium at the beginning, and it has that sort of vibe that no one knows you're here.
Yeah.
It's
a great place to sit and talk, and this is the big thing. I think this is what pubs are for, and that you're right to specify between pubs and bars because bars are places that you go to go out and maybe even be seen. Pubs are places you go to not be seen. At times, to sit and talk and be with your friends and not worry about the rest of the world too much and chat away about things innocently, and that's what you're able to do here. It's got all these little hidden rooms, lovely little tables. I was so pleased when you picked it because it's probably my favourite as well in a city centre sense.
By a distance it is in a way. Well, and there's a lot of good pubs in Liverpool, but this one is very, very special. And it's interesting what you say about the pub bar distinction, and we talked about that beforehand, and why it actually exists. The Victorians described the language of what a pub looks like and what it should do. It was almost like a to use a Corbusian concept, a factory for drinking booze in and being sociable in and getting drunk in. Whereas we've complicated things in the post-war era, such that bars exist for lots of different reasons. As you said, like being a Ponzi poser, like networking, like lots of having.
Yeah, you don't network here.
No,
you go for a pint in Peter Kavanagh's.
So
with your friends and have an honest time.
So I wouldn't despise. I'd like to be alive in 100 years' time and go back and say, there was a genre of bar that wasn't pub then, and we can now see what it was, and maybe all these ridiculous cocktail bar concepts of which I've been an author of 1 or 2.
You are responsible for booth culture.
Yeah, I think I own a roundabout way. I now disown it though. I'm like Bobby Kennedy when he was on the McCain. He was a McCarthyist.
Yeah.
And then, horrific right winger Bobby Kennedy before his road to Damascus conversion became one of the great liberals of the 20th century.
And you're the Bobby Kennedy of Liverpool bars.
Yeah. I think it was the recession that made it that way. When people stopped buying champagne, wanting to sit on plush leather. Yeah. So what more can I say about this place? And I've been coming here for a long time, on and off, not often enough. And every time I come back, I go, remember that place. I think we all have that somewhere along like, why don't I come here?
Well, one of the reasons why, and I think people should make the trip up, is because if they come to the city centre for the first time, it's a little bit out of the way, but that in a sense is one of the things that makes it good. I think there's 4 or 5 very good pubs around here, but it's a little bit out of the way, and I think that's what makes it feel like a proper pub. It's not catering to anyone other than the people who are around it, and they're more than happy for you to come and join in, but it's not going to be made easy for you. We were talking before about the fact that they don't do food, and I think that's a great thing, to be honest with you, because ultimately most pubs do mediocre food at best. They don't do food. Why do something that you're not good at? What they're good at is a lovely place for people to sit and talk, brilliant decor that just feels really evocative, and it's a great pint, which we're currently on a pint of Pacific, and it's going down like nobody's business on this Sunday afternoon. It's fair to say.
Well, I haven't had any breakfast,
and you haven't had any breakfast,
so my thoughts could get out of hand. But you're absolutely right, and also, there's a class thing with the pubs. They didn't exist for the aspirational classes, for all kinds of new marketing codes of ABs and C1s. They existed for a class that wanted to have a drink, and were having quite a hard time, I suppose, in Victorian England anyway. And needed that escape, and therefore, as you said, food they could get. Well,
you can swear.
You have food. No one's going to swear. I don't know what I was going to do. I was going to say they could get food anyway. No, they couldn't, because. But that's not the point. The drinking thing was a specific thing. I'm coming here to have an escape, a form of escapism.
The other reason why people come to pubs is to talk about football. You were at Liverpool 9, Crystal Palace 0.
Yeah.
How well did Liverpool play? In your memory, how well did Liverpool play?
I remember coming out of it, because back in those days you had very high expectations of performance, thinking it was a 7 out of 10 performance. It was one of those. We did, apart from the goals, did we make any?
Apart from the goals,
did we make any chances? Of course it is. Of course it is.
We only made 3 chances apart, so we made 12.
I go, I think we put 3 free kicks in directly. I might be exaggerating. I think Barnsley puts one straight in.
That's the 7th, I think.
Steve Nicol puts a free kick directly.
No, and Barnsley is the 8th. We haven't researched this, and I deliberately didn't.
Should we go on my hazy memory?
Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to talk about it as hazy memory, because I remember I was 8. We didn't go. We went to a lot of games. Me and my dad 87, 88 actually, but we didn't go to the 9-0. And but I remember hearing about it because you didn't watch the game then.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad telling me, like, we're 9-0 up, and me this not even factoring in my brain. But then I remember getting the video, and I remember watching the video of Liverpool 9, Crystal Palace 0 to death. And I think Barnes with the 7th or the 8th, can't quite remember.
It is a free kick, isn't it?
It's a free kick, because there was 8 different scorers.
Yeah, so doesn't Nicol get 2?
Nicol gets the 1st and the 9th.
That's right,
with
a
beautiful display of symmetry. I remember that bit.
But back in those days, it seemed like football existed for Liverpool Football Club. It was all the theatre of it. What I mean is, Aldridge, at some point, it's so indulgent, the whole performance, that Aldridge is going to go scandalously, but it feels horribly unfair on him.
So we've said it's 87, 88, it's 89, 90, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. He's been nigh on top scorer for 2 years, but Ian Rush has come back. And the space has been saved for Ian Rush, and Aldo is just one. This isn't a time when the squad game was 12 players. Certainly was for Liverpool. We just didn't get injuries on any great scale. I'm exaggerating to a degree, but that was the facts of the matter. They meant that there was only going to be one number 9. You didn't rotate for Europe, and we weren't in Europe then because of the ban. So Aldridge was on his way. He was, obviously passionate about the club. It was his dream to play there. He'd had a fantastic rate of success, but he was being packed off. I don't think he probably never forgave Kenny for it. He's given a chance to score a penalty in front of the Kop.
With his first kick,
yeah. He brought on the sub to do it. And it feels, as I said, the whole thing felt staged. The whole thing felt staged. But then so much of what Liverpool achieved felt scripted. All our great trials, of course that's how it ends.
On this, you mentioned the European point. I think it's an interesting thing to talk about. Kenny 85, 86, he actually did rotate a fair bit, didn't he? He'd go to a sweeper system, he'd come out to a sweeper system, lads would get a chance, they'd play for a while. He rotated himself. Then 87, 88 comes along, and there's a bit of rotation there, partially due to injury, but also, Spackman gets games.
He's got a key 15 in that season.
But I think the line that's quite interesting, he had a key 15 back then, you're right. He was like key 12s. Kenny was ahead of the game in this. Kenny had key 15s, key 16s, and then, but it would have been so interesting, and not just because of how good they were, and not just basically because they could have been the best team in Europe at the time, 87, 88, but it would have been really interesting to watch Kenny of that period managing in Europe. Because other players that might have got a bit more of a chance. Molby might have got a game a bit more, because Kenny, other than 85, 86, he doesn't use Molby very much. It's we've forgotten collectively. He doesn't use Molby much. He uses him for 1 year.
There's 3 or 4 players who are decent players who Kenny Sotheby Parks. Paul Walsh is one of them. John Walk gets part, Craig Johnson gets very quickly put to one side, and Mulvey's career, they all fade. I think. Well, Bob Walsh has a sort of renaissance at Spurs briefly, but Mulvey's actually put into hibernation, which actually his career needed, quite frankly. I think Jan what has to be remembered about Jan Mulvey at that time is, after the success of the double season, if ever some success went to a player's head, it was Jan that year. He was He came from having a difficult first season to being absolutely incredible. I can imagine Ross Barkley actually having a season like this next year and going, oh my! But instead of like going kicking on from it, becoming the model profession, going, I'm going to be the best player in the world, which I think was actually not the most far-fetched claim you could have made. How good Mulvey was in the double season, he just went out on the town. Jan went out on the town
had a great time.
And he got arrested for having a fight in a gay club. He drove his car 120 miles an hour through South Liverpool, and he ended up in jail. And ate a lot. He ate a lot of food.
But all these players, for instance, start to see Kenny Buckland, who's saying he scores in the Palace game 89-90.
Yeah,
he's got Gillespie. Hansen's come to the end of his career, but he's still available. So he's already he's got one too many centre backs there.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. It's true. He had the concept. I think, funnily enough, I used to looking at stats. I don't know if you do more when you're a kid or not. I was. We always had, throughout the season, we'd use less players than any other club going. From I'm talking about my memorable childhood.
The Paisley side.
The 79, call it 79 to 89 period. We seem to be regularly using under 16 players a season. I'm sure there are a few aberrations to that along the way, but you look at most clubs in the area, it's not contradicting your point, but they were often using 20-22 players. That was because of injury. They weren't building squads. Liverpool had a reputation in that era as not getting injured. People used to go, why? The media would go, why are you not getting players injured? And they would go, oh, it's the Shanks culture. You don't talk to injured players. But they were doing something much smarter. And I don't quite know what. Paisley was ahead of the time because he was a sort of self-trained physio. And I think that they said he had an uncanny sense of where a player was potentially going to get injured.
Best drink up, we're going to go to the next one. You can tell me what it is in a second. Actually, we're not actually that clear on what the next one is, but I think Peter Kavanagh, this is a place where one can sit and talk, possibly for the rest of your life, if things go the right way. Is that fair?
It is. But we'll have to have a piss before the next pub, though.
Will we?
We're on that bombshell.
On that bombshell, ladies and gentlemen, you'll catch up with the next pub in a second. And this is his second choice, Rob Gutman's second choice of pub. Rob, which one is it?
It's the Belvedere, just off Fulton Street. Actually, does this have a street name, Neil? This little.
I don't know if it does. I don't know if it does actually. It should have. We can check outside later on.
It's another Liverpool 8 pub.
I think this is probably not quite Liverpool 8 actually.
Fulton Street is, and it has an L8 on the end of the side.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. But like Peter Kavanagh's just the border country. There's Liverpool 8. To not confuse people who are not from Liverpool. There's Heartland Liverpool 8, which is notorious and celebrated in equal measure, and then there's the bit of Liverpool 8 which is really on the fringe of the city centre.
I think it's city. I think this is a city centre pub,
and it's gentrified in the environs. But anyway, this pub, the Belvedere, is another historic pub. It's been here a long time. It's great because it's tiny. It's still what it was. And what I like about a pub is if it's the English equivalent to the American, it feels like something that could have been in Twin Peaks, kind of. The clientele is slightly wrong. There's the odd, bourgeois camera-esque person like myself and you, Neil, who will wander in.
Of course.
But generally, the bar will be propped up by a strange-looking alcoholic. Very few women, not that that's a good thing, but that just tends to be the currency with these kind of places. Actually, I digress. This actually has another clientele, which is people who play really good classical music.
In the Philharmonic?
Yeah.
It's a big Philharmonic pub, and the other thing as well is we went to Peter Kavanagh's, and it's interesting you picked these two, because Peter Kavanagh's is a big winter pub. I think this is a big summer pub. And the reason why is because there's the little alcove thing, and people can congregate outside there in huge numbers, and I think it's a massive summer. Liverpool City Centre has a shortage of good beer gardens. Yeah. And the front of this place sort of our camera at the back there, Joe, is actually nodding when I say there's a shortage of good beer gardens, and there's it's just distracting me. And there is this space at the front of this, and I think people really respond to it. And inside as well, again, it's very good ale. We're on something from the Liverpool brewery here, I think, aren't we? And
Yeah. I mean, that is a common denominator. I don't think we particularly mentioned in Peter Kavanagh's, but they've got to serve a pint properly, a pint or bitter.
Yeah.
I don't actually recognise lager as a drink, but that sounds like I'm an old man. But even when I was a young man and when we're drinking lager, I'd only drink bitter, and I will drink crap bitter as well. I'm a big fan of smooth flow.
I love smooth flow. Do you know what's really underrated? Both John Smith and Tetley's cask. Tetley's cask is phenomenal. They've got it in the Roscoe Head.
Yeah.
And what a pint. It's sublime.
Yeah.
Whereas Tetley's smooth flow can do one.
It can, but in terms of
times of stress.
Yeah, it's rubbish. And when I'm in football aways, normally, and you're getting shit lager in plastic glasses, smooth flow feels like the nectar of the gods comparatively as a quality beverage. But it's sort of relative.
We're talking about this place. This place it is small. I'm not entirely aware of how it can work as an economic model.
A capacity of 12. It's shocking.
Yeah, when they did the night, it was rammed.
Yeah.
How many were there? There were 12.
When they put the doorman on, they're swelling the numbers by a percentage.
But the exterior is great. Again, this is another very, very good one. It's a good sort of top end of town pub. I used to live around here. I used to live in Back Percy Street. This is a pub you come to. Okay, then we'll go back to the football stuff. Then the football stuff. Okay. We were trying to before the 9-0 against Palace, using that as a starting point for conversation. The 8 different scorers I think it's a big deal, and I want to talk about the scorer of the first and the scorer of the 9th. I want to talk about Steve Nicol. Yeah. Steve Nicol was a man who knew where the goal was. For a man who was theoretically a fullback, he knew where the goal was.
He's ahead of his time, Steve.
Hugely so.
The consummate modern football. People would kill for Steve Nicol now, because Steve Nicol solves all your problems. He was at the best. The term utility player doesn't really get used these days.
Because there's too many subs.
Yeah, I suppose that's right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. He was the consummate utility player because he could play both full-back positions. He
could play wide midfield, arguably.
Yeah. And as soon as the positions I remember he plays, both full-back positions. As soon as used him as a centre-back for a bit.
Yeah.
It wasn't his best position. He definitely played central midfield at one point. I don't know if we ever played him as an out-and-out winger, but there's no reason he couldn't have done. I mean, he famously scored a hat-trick from full-back against Newcastle, and it wasn't a surprise. I think of the great left-backs or full-backs who were something bigger than that position. From history, you think about Cafu.
Cafu's right back. There's Bremer
and the Real Madrid Brazilian Roberto Carlos. And although because something sort of the parochialism of the British Isles, you don't sort of bracket them with him, but Steve Nicol should be up there with that generation. He didn't play in Europe.
He didn't play in Europe, and he didn't have.
He played for Scotland.
He played in the 83-84 European Cup final. But he didn't get at his pomp the European when Liverpool were in Europe. But also the other thing about him is he didn't take free kicks or anything like that, but he would still get you a goal return of 5 to 10 a season.
Well, he did routinely knock a free kick in against Palace. Yeah, he did. He was incredible. His partnership with Barnes on the left was just the most mind-blowing combination you'll ever have on the flank of a
when you've got two players who'll score, when you've got two, because after about in that season, the 87-88 season, 10 games gone, 11 games gone, Steve Nicol was number 2 in the scoring charts to John Aldridge.
We had a triangle down that left-hand side. I remember watching it, and it just never failed to unlock a defence or get behind. It was Nicol and Barnes and Beardsley, and Beardsley was the pivot. They'd get the ball, overlap each other. One of them would find space because of the other's run. They'd put it into Beardsley, who was the best first-time passer of the ball you'll ever see, who would just sort of swivel his body and sort of find a bit of geometry and ping it the other way.
Do we be behind? Beardsley?
I don't, because to me, in many respects, he's second only to Kenny in terms of the type of football.
Collectively do.
I think so. I think it's huge. Yeah, maybe he didn't play for Liverpool long enough because Souness ridiculously discarded it. One of the greatest crime. I don't want to give Graham Souness too much of a hard time for the legend he is, but it was a crazy decision. But I think that's possibly why, because he left far too soon, and he had the twilight phase that Kenny had, but not at Liverpool. Kenny was brilliant from the age of 26 to 30 when he joined us. There was a period where people would then be questioning, he's over 30, he's a striker, is he going to be as good? About 32, 33, he hit an amazing patch of form, and then again at I think 35, 36 in his swan song as a player manager, he was brilliant again. But Beardsley did that, except he didn't do the bit post 30 at Liverpool. That's the great tragedy. Incredible footballer, yeah.
I think he scores in this Palace game. He scores a lovely goal. He's just. I think he sets up. He sets up a runner at some point in that game as well. He sets one up, and it's sublime. I'm just suddenly thinking about.
He passes like Coutinho. That people want to know what Beardsley was like.
Well, I think Coutinho's greatest historical Liverpool reference point is Beardsley.
Yeah.
And I think, but he needs to get the goals that Beardsley got as well. That's where he got to improve.
Well, Beardsley was Aguero and Coutinho in one player.
But what it was, Beardsley was the sort of player who sort of fell out of fashion between, say, 05 and 11.
Yeah.
05 and 2011, 2012. And now I think it's coming back in. They split the role, but now I think it's sort of coming back in, the idea that you do the dual role, and that's where I think Beardsley's fascinating to talk about, because where would he play now? Would he come off a flank? I think it's more likely he'd come off a flank now than get to play. And that's what now is defined by sometimes players even like Mario Fellaini now plays as this weird sort of number 10 thing, because he's got a physical presence. It's so hard to play through the centre now if you're not a big lad and not physically able to be in control. But I think it's phenomenal. I think that Beardsley was sumptuous and would play off the flank.
Liverpool's first number 10 was number 7 Kenny.
Yeah.
Who went from being an out-and-out striker, a Torres-like striker in a way, not quite the pace, but certainly greater strength and guile, and a similar sort of finisher in some respects. Kenny dropped deeper and deeper and deeper, but then Beardsley came in, and he was deep from the word go. It was interesting you talk about wide. He was normally central. You looked at Beardsley on the pitch with an Aldridge, you sounded like, you go, we're 4-4-2. But Beardsley would drop back as deep as the central midfielders to get the ball. He would often take upon himself to hug the touchline, but not so that he could take people on, just so that he would stretch the play. You'd see a ball come into him, and he'd lay it off first time back inside. He was the most intelligent footballer I think I've ever seen play for Liverpool, and I put that above Kenny. He was unbelievably intelligent footballer, but Beardsley was the most.
Excellent stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go to our next pub in a second. We're going to find out what it is when we get there. This is Gutmanns Bars. This is Liverpool 9, Crystal Palace 0. I'm having a great afternoon. I very much hope you are watching this. Okay, then this is Gutmanns' third pub, and it's the Pilgrim, which comes as a massive surprise to me. I quite like the Pilgrim, but I wouldn't have it as one of my favourites. I've got to be quite honest. I think it's a decent boozer. I think it's one I like to spend some time in. Why have you picked this?
I'm retro-rationalising this.
I'm right behind it. I'm intrigued.
Well, thinking of your 3 favourite pubs is like thinking of your 3 favourite songs. There has to be, there's got to be an angle rather than just going these 3 at any one moment. It's got a nostalgic value. I love the location here. We're still stone throw from Peter Kavanagh's and the Belvedere. We're still in Liverpool's Georgian Quarter. I'm shamelessly aligning myself to that in terms of pubdom. Cobble streets go a long way.
They carry a lot of weight.
If you've got a lot of booze and the romanticness of walking to cobbles and stumbling into pubs. This building, I don't know, so I'm sure I'll be corrected retrospectively, but I think it's one of the oldest pubs in Liverpool, and the oldest buildings in Liverpool. I'm not sure how long the pub stood here. I think there are some legends of Dick Turpin-ness in terms of when it's been a coaching inn. It looks like it's been a coach house or coaching inn at some stage.
Yeah. This very thing we're sitting in suggests that.
Yeah. Its interior is not that historic, but it's been actually the same way as far as I can remember it since at least the 1980s, and it's hugely nostalgic for me from my student days. I arrived in Liverpool in 1985 and 1984, I think. And this is one of the very first places I came in.
It's still now a big student pub. This feels to me like we are on the territory of desert island pubs, which doesn't quite work as a concept. But one of the reasons why
which pubs would you put on a desert island?
Well, exactly, yes, exactly, yeah. So the part of the reason why this works though is that it's a pub that personally means something to you.
Yeah, definitely. I was born and bred in London, and London. My childhood memory of London, it was all just a morass of just absolute huge amounts of people and a sort of alienation which you get in a space that big where people are congregated so closely together. In Liverpool, I arrived at 18 and suddenly felt, this sounds really, I don't know how, I suddenly felt free, and it was a wonderful place to be in, and its drinking spaces and its clubs were very different to London, and I really felt alive in them. And this is one of them. It's just got a character to it. It felt part of the time.
It has got a character to it. I do like the place. I very much choose to come here dependent on mood. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Sometimes you're very much in a mood to be in and around the Pilgrim. I absolutely love the current menu. Have you spotted it inside? It's fabulous.
No, I assume it's the burger.
No, it's not. No, it's basically things you have on a breakfast. And there's a list of things you have on a breakfast and how many items. So you can go up to 12 items. They presume no one wants more than 12.
This is where the English menu and the Chinese menu principle collide. Chinese, if you drill down, the Chinese menu only has 5 dishes. Once you get past the appetizers, but they expand it to this vast thing. And the English breakfast, the English Greasy Spoon Cafe can have like 20. I was in London the other week for the Arsenal game, and I thought, it's 20 variations on a breakfast.
On one thing.
The egg. You know, you can have, there's like combinations.
They love the chips. They love the chips on the fry up in London. It's mad.
Yes.
One of the many things they're getting wrong. Cost of living notwithstanding.
It's the hash browns and gratuitously thrown in like Weatherspoons.
Yeah. The other thing that's noticeable about these pubs that we've gone to, we've now gone to Peter Kavanagh's, we've gone to the Belvedere. Your third pick is the Pilgrim. The toilets are terrible. I can't even begin to tell you how bad they are in each of these places. I'm all right with that. You're all right with that, aren't you?
In the spirit of our hosts, I don't want to say terrible. I want to say they're rustic.
You want to say they're rustic? They're not terrible in Peter Kavanagh's. They're terrible here.
Yeah, they're special. There's no requirement, for a high bar on the toilets in these places, and in a way, it's quite right. I mean, I'm with it. I'm going to diss Weatherspoons. Weatherspoons, apparently, legend has it that they design their pubs from the toilets outwards and believe the toilet is the most important customer interaction. And if you get that right, everything else is right.
They can fuck off. They
can fuck off with that. I've done many bars. Some are really quite salubrious, but the toilets have always been fairly average to appalling. Really,
are you proud of this?
Retrospectively, yes. It might, It's not a marketing statement I suppose I would have put out a few years ago, but this is true. Because I just think, the toilet doesn't need to be the most comfortable place. You come from for many, many other reasons.
The fact that you came to the city when you did 84, 85, it's very much ludicrously, in a sense, it's a football decision.
Absolutely, shamelessly so. I pressurising middle class parents who I love dearly and I hope never watch this, but and they didn't want me to go to the frozen north to that Liverpool. Liverpool had a really bad name in the 80s. But I'd been addicted to Liverpool since I was about 10 in London because they were the greatest team the world had ever seen. And ever since I've been an early teen and I've been allowed to get on trains on my own, I've been coming up to watch matches in Liverpool. And I'd only ever seen really the bus route from Lime Street to Anfield. Yeah. As a student, I saw another side of life in Liverpool. And in 84, 85, when I arrived, Liverpool was, economically in a dark, dark place. It was only a few years after the riots. But as a student, it was perfect. Just cliches had an energy and a vibrancy because of that. Because the music scene was amazing. Because everything was cheap, and if you were a student, it meant you could do what you wanted to do. The danger at every turn was part of the magic.
And so it's coming to places like this, but also it's going into the game. And we talked before about Palace, and we talked about that 9-0. We've been this has become quietly the theme of the issue, and that 9-0 it feels to me now sort of like the end of something. Like, we went on to win the league that season, but that was probably both simultaneously the watermark at the end of something. You think about the ages of those players who put the ball in the back of the net. These are all lads who were late 20s at this point. Craig Hussein scores, and Glenn Hussein was signed as a 31-year-old. He was already either at or just about to be past his peak when Liverpool bought him. It does feel like it's the grand celebration of something that's perhaps just ended or ending, and no one knew it at the time.
I was thinking about that the other day, the swan song performances of that generation. I was thinking it was the one moment where we played great and we were never great again. And there's a couple the year later where we didn't win the league and Kenny resigned and things turned forever. But thinking about it, in that season, Palace certainly represents one of those. We've become used to that kind of sort of mark point. As I said last time, it felt scripted for us, though football existed for us.
Okay then, we're rounding this up now. You've gone the Pilgrim. If you were to put your 3 pubs in an order for a mini crawl, what would your order be?
For outside, Peter Kavanagh's is my favourite pub in Liverpool. Well, they're all very near each other. Start at the Pilgrim, go to the Belvedere, then end up at PK's and stay there for
and what just bubbled under your list? What are the pubs? I mean, we talked about Lions having a fair bit.
Well, on the way between them, Ye Crack is a brilliant pub.
Just there.
It's a legendary Liverpool pub, and you do a search on Liverpool and
has a great beer garden.
Has a great beer garden.
And has a bad toilet.
And ticks so many boxes and lovely murals and. Yeah, it's a fantastic pub. There's many that could have made the cut. I mean, I wouldn't be rushing, without disrespecting them, wouldn't be rushing to a tourist pub like the Philharmonic, marvellous as it is. If you're looking for something a bit different, these 3 are particularly interesting and different. If you want to be the other side of town, the Lion Tavern we both really love.
I love the Lion Tavern.
Special. We're not talking glamour here.
We're not talking. Do we look like we could be talking glamour? We're not talking glamour. I think it's fair to say.
Abby Clancy has never been to these pubs.
She most definitely hasn't, and I'm not going to say that may that continue. She comes across very well on Strictly Come Dancing, but ultimately, these are pubs. It's good to be in them.
Yes.
It's a joy to be alive that day, my friends. As I keep saying, this has been this little Anfield Wrap special, talking about Crystal Palace, but also talking about all these fabulous pubs. I hope you've enjoyed it. You need to keep swiping your way through the magazine, and I think that I'm already rather drunk. I'm going to get drunker. We did this today after the derby, for God's sake. I was smashed yesterday. Yeah, we're in a pub show. It could go either way. We're going to leave you to it. This is the Anfield Wrap, and I hope you're continuing to enjoy the magazine.